You know what? I think I can summarize this game for the Kraken in one word. Any guesses to what that word is? I'll give you a hint. It starts with an F. That's right. Frustration. So yeah, that should pretty much do it for this one. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. And until next time, really, you actually want more? Fine, here you go. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken lose in overtime to the Winnipeg Jets 3-2. So sure, they do earn a point in the standings, but hopefully anyway, this will be the most frustrating point that the Kraken earn all season. Though I guess to be fair, it's not so much the point that they earned that was frustrating, as it is the point that they lost. Before we get to that though, in the game that led to that frustrating end for the Kraken, there's even a little bit of frustration in just the lineup, which is a bit of a shuffled lineup from what we've seen over the course of most of the rest of the season, which at least to me seems like a bit of an overreaction to the first shutout of the season, and a shutout that really was more the other team playing well defensively than the Kraken playing poorly. But either way, for the first time, they mix up all four lines. I guess to be fair, it's not a total reshuffling of the lines, which certainly would raise some eyebrows with the start to the season the Kraken have had. And for the first three lines, it's really just the left wingers moving around, as Bjorkstrand moves down from the first line to the third line, McCann up to the second line from that spot, and Schwartz up from the second line to the first. So all three of those lines have their left wingers moved around a little bit. And then the fourth line sees the first change that we've seen there in quite a while, and this is where it's a little bit frustrating that instead of Shane Wright, it's Kuhlman that comes into that spot. And look, I get that you don't want to scratch Geekie at center, which would be the most natural spot for Wright to fit into, considering the run that Geekie's been on scoring points, not to mention the fact that he seems like the go-to option to win a faceoff when you need to, which has been a problem for the Kraken still to this point in the season, even though even Geekie has started to fall off in that regard. But even if you're gonna make that change at wing, Wright has already played a couple of games at wing when he filled in for McCann on the road trip, and in fact, those are probably the two best games that he's played, certainly the one where he got 13 plus minutes against the Wild. So if you're gonna make a change for the first time in a long time on that fourth line, I don't see why you wouldn't put in Wright and instead put in Kuhlman, which is nothing against Kuhlman. I still like Kuhlman as a player, but again, now that this is 3 home scratches in a row, it's starting to get a bit frustrating, as we'd really like to see Wright get a little bit more ice time. And maybe even more strangely, considering again, the Kraken are coming off of a very strong full game defensive performance against the Wild, even if they did lose 1-0. The mixing and matching in the lineup wasn't just limited to the forward lines, as we also saw some changes on the defensive end for the first time in quite a while. I mean, we did see Fleury and Alexiak's spot in the last game, but that was due to injury. This time the changes are not as much due to injury, as we see Borgen and Soucy split up for the first time again in quite a while, as Borgen moves down from the second pairing to the third pairing, where he's paired with Olofsson, playing his first game for the Kraken, ever, but this season after being called up to fill Alexiak's spot on the roster. So of course then moving up to the second pair, I guess actually would be Soucy moving up to the second pair from the third pair, where he's with Schultz, and that spot that was Alexiak's moves down to the third pair. Again, we already said that was Olofsson. And wouldn't you know it, but immediately when we start the game, within the first minute of it, we see the effect of all these lineup changes after a period of a lot of consistency, as the Kraken, in that first minute, are already going to the penalty kill for too many men on the ice, with some confusion on one of the changes. Fortunately though, the Kraken are at least able to kill off this early Jets power play with the help of Jones, who makes at least one pretty nice save over the course of it. And then a couple minutes later, the Kraken get their first power play of the game, which is a power play unit that really needs to get out of the slump that they've been in since that hot start to the season. And they aren't really able to get much of anything going for the first minute of this power play, but they do eventually draw a second one to get to a 5-on-3. It's a minute of 5-on-3 that they almost managed to waste even that, as they get into the offensive zone, but just kind of don't show any urgency or inspiration as far as trying to score is concerned. Eventually, though, Burakovsky fires off a shot of the net, which is saved by Riddick. The rebound, though, is right out to Eberle in front of the net all by himself, or pretty much all by himself anyway. He gets it from his skate to his stick and through the 5-hole into the back of the net to give the Kraken the 1-0 lead and the power play goal. This does still mean that the Kraken have another minute of power play because they scored on the 5-on-3, though again, they're not able to put a second one on the board there. But even still, the Kraken were at least able to maintain momentum out of this power play and really hold it for the vast majority of the rest of the first period, which was the majority of it that was left at this point. And although it doesn't necessarily show up on the advanced stats or the shots on goal by the end of the period, the Kraken really felt like they were playing as the better team for the vast majority of it and certainly had the better scoring opportunities. Bjorkstrand put one off of the post, which he definitely has a little bit of empty net there to shoot at. He just can't quite get one to go still here at the start of the season after scoring in the first game. And Eberle just had a monster play to set up Beniers for a one-on-one that Riddick was able to rob him of. So, yeah, in the end, Riddick really keeps the Jets in this game at the end of the first, where it's still 1-0, and it turns out it was very important that he was able to do that for the Jets. And as we get into the second period, this is where things start to become a bit of a mess, really, for both teams. The first few minutes have nothing much to write home about. About 5 to 6 minutes in, the Jets get another power play, which doesn't really go that well for them. In fact, the Kraken get the better scoring chance on it, as Tanev gets a free breakaway, which he did make a nice move to beat Riddick, but unfortunately his backhand shot, he shovels a little too high and it goes off the crossbar and stays out. And then a couple minutes later, the Jets get another power play, and this one does find the back of the net. It's a bit of an unfortunate bounce for the Kraken, as a shot I think just straight up misses the net. I'm not sure he was trying to actually pass this one, but it does end up turning into a pass that rebounds off of the end boards behind the net out to the other side, and Scheifele gets a clean shot off from it that Jones doesn't have a chance to react to in time, and the Jets tie it up on the power play 1-1, which unfortunately not only ties the game, but also ends the streak that the penalty kill had been on at 18 straight that they killed off before this 19th penalty does eventually score. And it's at this point, or I guess technically a few seconds later, that the tone for the rest of the game would be set. And it was a tone of frustration and physicality, really, for both teams. As the play leaves the Kraken offensive end, so the Jets' end of the ice, behind the play, there's still some pushing and shoving and words being exchanged between Brendan Dillon and Burakovsky, which eventually leads to a pretty hard shove and push to the top of Burakovsky from Brendan Dillon, which immediately draws a crowd. It draws at least 2 officials, and quickly also Will Borgen, who's coming to the defense of his team's leading scorer. Borgen quickly draws the attention then of Brendan Wheeler, the recently stripped of his captaincy ex-captain of the Jets, who is trying to pull Borgen away from this the entire time. Borgen kind of looks back at him, gives him a smile, and I'm sure had something to say to him, which only pisses off Wheeler more, and Wheeler eventually is able to pull Borgen from it, and Borgen just kind of follows him to the ice, in the end kind of taking Wheeler to the ice, while Burakovsky and Dillon are still pushing around. Lowry was definitely involved as well, which is kind of a funny thing in of itself, as this whole thing was happening in front of the Kraken bench, where Lowry's dad is now an assistant coach for the Kraken, assuming he's on the bench, pretty much standing there watching his son try to fight players on the team that he coaches. So, kind of funny. When all is said and done and the dust finally settles, or maybe more accurately, the gloves and sticks that are now strewn all about the ice finally settle on this almost mini line brawl between the two teams, it's the Kraken who come out with the power play, as Borgen and Dillon end up trading roughing calls, though they weren't necessarily directly involved with each other. And the added-on power play is actually a double minor for roughing on Wheeler. Luckily for Wheeler, though, the first 2 minutes of the power play are completely wasted by the Kraken, with the Jets probably actually getting the better scoring chance between the two teams on it. And in the second 2 minutes, the Kraken are actually able to kind of make something of this and get some chances off on net, but Riddick and the penalty kill for the Jets are able to prevent it from going into the net. And so from there, having now wasted 4 minutes of power play, the Jets pretty much take control of what's left of the second period, eventually getting their third power play of the period in these final minutes, not long after the Kraken fail to score on their 4-minute power play. And in the first few seconds of this Jets power play here at the end, Jones comes up with a spectacular save to keep the Jets from scoring on a second straight power play and taking a 2-1 lead into the intermission. There's kind of a scramble chaos play off to the side of the Kraken net that Jones is pulled out to, trying to block off any angles, but eventually the puck bounces out of that, out in front of what's pretty much an empty net. But before they can get to hitting it in, Jones is able to stretch his leg back out in front of at least half of the net anyway, and ultimately get his toe to the puck just as it's about to cross the line, eventually pulling the puck off of the line with his toe, and keeping the Kraken, well, at least keeping this game tied going into the intermission. I mean, he actually had another pretty big save later on in this power play. But yeah, Jones coming up big here late in the second. But even in spite of Jones's heroic end of the second, the third period starts once again in the first minute, with the Kraken going to another kill. And another kill, really for the second time this game, on a bit of an iffy kind of soft call from the refs, who were very quick to their whistle anytime the Kraken did anything that could be even construed as a penalty. And while I don't want to say that the Jets got away with things over the course of this game, they certainly seem to get away with things based on what the Kraken were getting called for. One of those situations where if you're going to call it for one side, you should probably call it for both, and it shows in the end where the Jets end up with 7 power plays in this game to 4 for Seattle, who don't get one at all in the third. Again, the Kraken are able to kill this one off and actually get probably the better scoring chance once again on it, as Gord has a drive to the net about halfway through this power play that once again Riddick is able to shut down. I guess the good news for the Kraken is that coming out of this, at this point, 5th power play for the Jets in the game, they are able to at least somewhat bottle their frustration and maybe even use it to their advantage, as over the next few minutes, they are able to start pressing once again like they were able to in the first period, and eventually get a transition out of their end through the neutral zone. It's Gord who gets it up to Bjorkstrand. Bjorkstrand gets it to Tanev, who's pretty close to him. And then Tanev, I'm not sure if he was trying to get it back to Bjorkstrand, who was just a few feet away from him as this play develops. But eventually Tanev just kind of decides to do the whole thing himself, fires off a shot from the slot, and it finds the corner of the net to give the Kraken the 2-1 lead here about midway through the third in a game that, like the Wild one, felt like every goal was going to matter. And also for Tanev, I'm sure felt good after he put that one off of the crossbar after beating Riddick on the shorthander in the second. This time he goes low just to avoid that crossbar entirely, and it works out for him to give the Kraken the lead. Also, kind of entertainingly on this, there's a point where Tanev's handling the puck and kind of it looks like gets caught between trying to get it back over to Bjorkstrand, who was maybe in a bit of a better position to take a shot. Instead, he ends up putting it between Bjorkstrand's legs, then grabbing it from the other side of Bjorkstrand, eventually doing a full 360 around Bjorkstrand's right foot before firing off that shot and scoring on it. So, kind of a funny puck handling there moment from Tanev, but still he ends up with the goal, and one that definitely excited the crowd, especially hearing Tanev and Gord's names both announced on it. Now, it's from here, really throughout the course of the rest of this third period and the rest of the game, that the frustration from a fan point of view really starts to build and just ramp up over the course of the rest of this game, and starts off pretty quick as the Jets are able to gain momentum not long after Tanev's lead-taking goal, and they maintain it throughout the course of the entire middle part of the third, not allowing the Kraken to hardly ever escape their defensive end, and when they do, they have no other option other than to chip it down to the other end of the ice and go off for a change and regroup back in the defensive end. To the Kraken credit, again, defensively 5-on-5, they were playing very well in their end of the ice, not allowing anything to the inside and keeping the chances for the Jets, even if there were a good number of them, all to the outside, making Jones' job a little bit easier in net. Eventually, the Kraken are able to slow down this momentum and start to get a couple chances back the other way, but just as they do in the final minutes of the game, they end up going back to the box. It's Eberle on a hooking call that, I can see it, but considering the things the Jets were getting away with and the fact that they've already had more power plays than the Kraken in this game, it does seem like a bit of a soft call. Either way, the Jets are going to a power play now in the final minutes and a chance to pull Riddick partway through it to get a 6-on-4 opportunity. The Kraken kill does do a good job of not allowing the Jets actually to even get any opportunities, and although they do get a few seconds of 6-on-5, it doesn't go much of anywhere. So we can all breathe a sigh of relief as the Kraken escape this late Jets power play. And with just a minute left, although they probably will have to survive a little bit more 6-on-5 time for the Jets, it looks like the Kraken are going to be able to escape with the 2-1 win and 2 more points in the standings. However, with again just a minute left after this power play, in that minute, first, it's Dunn who gets all up in the face of one of the officials after a face-off and a little bit of chaos there, trying to figure out what's going on. There's some heated conversation going on, which continues on into a TV timeout, and eventually leads to a little bit of pushing and shoving between the two as the ref grabbed Dunn's stick and he kind of rips it away from the official. Eventually, the official goes to the bench to warn Hackstall about what Dunn's doing, that it could lead to a penalty, and honestly, considering how quick the refs were to the whistle against the Kraken, I'm surprised it didn't lead to a penalty. It doesn't really end up mattering, though, as the refs do find a reason to give the Kraken a penalty, and to be fair, this one had nothing to do with a quick whistle. It's just what has to be one of the stupidest plays I've seen, or stupidest things I've seen any Kraken do at any point in the team's existence to this point. As Susie, well behind the play as it's exiting the ice down the other direction with just 30 seconds left in the game, sucker punches Pierre-Luc Dubois, I think it was, in the side of the head. Dubois goes down to the ice like he's been shot, which, of course, it's kind of a Dubois thing to do. He's really milking it. But still, Soucy sucker punched him in the side of the head right in front of the official while there's nobody else around or anything else going on that the official could even possibly be looking at. So, of course, Soucy goes to the box. It's only 2 minutes, but it hardly matters because there's only 30 seconds left. I'm kind of surprised Soucy didn't get more than 2 minutes. In the end, though, with just 4 seconds left, a shot off on net rebounds out to the side, and it's Wheeler who's able to get to the rebound first and ties the game at 2. And so, once again, what 30 seconds earlier was going to be a win for the Kraken, Soucy has managed to turn into an overtime chance for the Jets to come away with 2 points. And wouldn't you know it, 1 minute into overtime, which the Kraken have not been particularly good on 3-on-3 throughout the course of their existence, the first shot on goal, after some traded possession between the two teams, is a 2-on-1 chance. The shot is from Scheifele, and Jones doesn't really have much of a chance. It's a crossing pass that gets through Dunn and finds the back of the net from Scheifele to give the Jets the win. So not only does Soucy cost the Kraken the chance to win it in regulation, he cost them a point in the standings with his, again, completely boneheaded, maybe dumbest decision in the history of the franchise, which, again, I mean, they, only have existed for a year, but still. I mean, I guess to the team's credit, in the post-game, obviously they're not going to throw a teammate under the bus directly, but a number of guys mentioned, and Hackstall mentioned, you can't be taking undisciplined penalties late in the game, which could easily be referring to the fact that Eberle found his way to the box on what could definitely be considered a hook, even if, again, there were things that the Jets got away with that were just as much of penalties. It was still definitely referencing what Soucy did here, and again, maybe even referencing what Dunn was up to that could have easily led to a penalty itself. This is one that the Kraken are now going to have to sit on for 3 days, as they have 3 days off between this and their next game. And on top of that, also, as Hackstall pointed out, wasted another very good performance from Jones, who in regulation stopped 27 of 29. Eventually, his save percentage is just an even 900 as the first shot in overtime ends up going in to give him 27 saves on 30 shots. Still, a good performance from him that's wasted, and the whole game is wasted by Soucy's stupid decision. Again, like we said in the beginning, the Kraken do still get 1 point out of it, so it's only half as bad as it could have been if, say, they had managed to do something this stupid to lose it in regulation. But still, this is a game that they absolutely should have won at that point in the game and just handed the Jets the opportunity to win it. And then again, like we've said, they've not been particularly good 3-on-3 at any point in the team's history. In fact, I think they only have the one win 3-on-3, and that was Larson's winner in Pittsburgh last year. So yeah, to say this game was frustrating, I think would be saying the very least. Not only clearly frustrating for the players on the ice, who were definitely irritated and let the Jets under their skin, but also frustrating from a fan perspective to think that you're going to win the game and then 30 seconds later, or I guess a minute and 30 seconds later if you throw in overtime, end up losing it. As for Kraken 3 stars in this game, again, there were guys that played well. Like, that whole third line actually played pretty well. I think Tanev played well enough to be worthy of the first star. Obviously, he gets what should have been the game-winning goal there in the early part of the third period, and aside from that, was once again a monster on the forecheck and backcheck, as he really has been for the vast majority of this season. And of course, as always, Gord was right there with Tanev on the forecheck and backcheck, and just like Tanev was very good on the penalty kill, which they got a lot of time on the penalty kill in this one with the 7 kills, 2 of which end up letting in goals, so the penalty kill falling off of that 18 streak that they had going. Still, both Tanev and Gord having shorthanded chances. He also gets a secondary assist on Tanev's goal. And then the third star, I'll go to Jordan Eberle, gets that first goal, created what could have easily been a goal for Beniers, and had some other chances as well. So I think those three are pretty much the standouts as far as 3 stars. Again, Jones had a great game. Beniers had a pretty good game. Bjorkstrand and Burakovsky both played well. But in the end, it's all ruined anyway by Soucy, or at least partially ruined by Soucy. Again, 1 point's better than nothing. But a frustrating end to this one, to say the very least. Hopefully the Kraken, and especially Soucy in particular, though it would also probably apply to especially Dunn and maybe even Borgen, who can tend to be a little bit hot-headed themselves, use this as a learning opportunity to still have that very much a part of your game, getting under the other team's skin, being very physical and chippy. It's not a bad thing to have as a part of their playstyle, and I don't think it's going anywhere anyway. But to be able to rein it in a bit when you need to and not retaliate, especially with a sucker punch right in front of an official with nobody else around you other than your goaltender. And especially not at the end of the game when all you have to do is kill off 30 more seconds to get a win and another point in the standings. I suppose there was at least one aspect of this game that was awesome the entire way through, and quite the opposite of how this game finished, which I would have mentioned a lot earlier on in this video if it wasn't for how that finish happened. But that would be the jerseys that the Kraken wore, as for the first time in franchise history, they wear something that isn't their normal home or away. Of course, it's the reverse retro, which they've said they're going to wear 4 times this season, this one being the first. And I gotta say, I've been warming up to them since they released. When they released, I kind of had some mixed feelings, but they did look absolutely fantastic out on the ice. That two-tone between the dark blue and that kind of ice teal color really looked pretty incredible, especially with more of that ice color on the upper shoulders. Looked really good out on the ice, and I can't wait to get my hands on one. When I do, probably is going to be actually that next home game when I'll be able to pick it up. We'll have a video with close-ups of the jersey and all that for those of you that are still maybe thinking about whether you should pick one up or not. But with that said, I think we will start to close things out on this one. So as always, feel free to let me know what you thought down in the comment section in this game. Maybe just use it as a place to vent about how this game ended, or if you want to stay a little more positive, what you thought of the reverse retros. I guess maybe some of you don't necessarily see the reverse retros as a positive. Either way, let me know what you thought in the comment section below. And if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that help support the channel, so I'd appreciate you using them. And until next time, which will probably be before that Rangers game, stay safe out there, be good to each other, which means no sucker punching, especially in front of officials. God bless, and go Kraken.